Good afternoon from Istanbul. I know people attending this Zoom meeting from Central Asia, from United States, so there is a different time. Some places already night, the other places already noon or afternoon.
Sure.
So today we will have very important panelists, guests. We will talk about the war in the Middle East and its impact on Central Asian countries as well as Turkey. This Zoom meeting is organized by the Haydar Aliyev Center for Eurasian Studies, Center for Iranian Studies. This is the leading institution and think tank in Turkey dealing with the Iran, the issues related to Iran, and also Department of Political Science and International Relation at Ibn Haldun University. So we have participants, not only panelists, but also other participants attending from the different parts of the world, mainly from the we call Turkic world or Central Asia, Caucasus, and Turkey. So before I start to give the floor to panelists, I want to read the recent social media message from the American President Donald Trump. He said that, I mean, it's very interesting, and I'm trying to understand what does it mean. I mean, he said that, I'm quoting, the whole civilization will die tonight. So his mean tonight means that in the Turkish time is the 3 a.m., something like that. The American time, the United States Eastern time is the morning, around 8 o'clock. So whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want to happen, but it's probably will. However, now that we have complete and total regime change, where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something revolutionary, wonderful can happen. Who knows? We will find out tonight one of the most important moments in the long and complex history of the world. 47 years of extortion, corruption, and death will finally end. God bless the great people of Iran. So this is his message. First, I would like to ask the message to director of the Center for Iranian Studies, Serhan Afacan. Serhan, what do you think? What does it, mean Trump from this message? Is it really threatening, for me, first when I read, and does he planning to use the nuclear weapon? I didn't understand.
Merhabalar Yaşar Hocam. Hello and selamun aleyküm everybody. I think I can also speak in Turkish, right? Because I believe everybody here speaks Turkish of different sorts. But okay, I will definitely stick to English. I think this is a very timely panel to say first because there's a deadline approaching, and there are constant threats by President Trump against Iran, and we will see what happens. I personally have a lot of difficulties in understanding what Donald Trump actually means. Not that I do not take him seriously, quite to the opposite. I take the man very seriously because he is the President of the United States of America. But it's very difficult to actually understand what he means. Because one day he talks about the prospects for a wonderful deal, and the other day he starts threatening Iran. But I think the core of his messages over the last few days, even weeks, from the onset of the war onward, he wants a deal with Iran. First, he wants to finish this war, and then he wants a deal with Iran, and he wants to do that through force. That much we know because they have told us a lot about that, both President Trump and also his Vice President Vance also referred to this issue several times. And I think if there is no ceasefire until the deadline, I think that is going to be, that is going to be devastating for Iran. because Iranians have suffered a lot from the 28th of February onward, both in terms of leading figures like Ali Khamenei and a number of different people as well over the last few weeks, and also in terms of military capabilities. And this time, President Trump threatens Iran for hitting its civilian infrastructure. That is, I think, horrific. Because if he hits Iran's civilian infrastructure, electricity, and also desalination centers, etc., and I think that is going to be devastating for the Islamic Republic of Iran. My feeling, and this is my personal feeling, I have no undisclosed information, definitely. My personal feeling is that there is a very high possibility of a ceasefire between Iran and the US through the mediation of Pakistan, apparently. And I think now President Trump does everything possible to show to the world that Iranians are to accept this ceasefire through force because they are afraid of the United States of America and they are afraid of the potential military escalation by President Trump. So this is my personal feeling, but I totally understand that it's also very and equally possible that there is further escalation. But my feeling and the messages, my reading of the messages coming from Tehran is that there is still a very high potential and possibility for a ceasefire. And President Trump just trying to show to the world that his tactics and his use of force against Iran produced his expected outcome. And this is, I think, what he basically means by these threatening messages. Yaşar Hocam.
Thank you so much, Serhan Hocam. Alaaddin, you are in Washington, D.C. Probably you're at the George Washington University as a visiting research fellow. You smell the air there. So, what American people are thinking, or academia in the United States thinking Trump policies related to Middle East. And you also, as a policy analyst, Center for Progressive Reforms at Uzbekistan. So, how you comment on the Trump social media message, the last his message?
Thank you, Professor Sarah. In DC, policy communities divided when it comes to Iran issue. Certainly, when we ask about the U.S. president and what he wants, I should be honest, nobody knows, and he's very unpredictable. And I think this is also one of the ways of conducting policy. He tries to be ambiguous, vague in his messages, but at the same time, there is this policy which is called escalate to de-escalate, or projecting power of foreign policies through strengths. And most of the people, when they see such kind of rhetoric or hawkish standing on Iran, they see as a source, or I don't know, as a pressure point to force Iran to come into this negotiation table. But unfortunately, this kind of policies, from my perspective, again, would not work on Iran, because Iran made clear that it doesn't want to come to status quo. So they are not planning to stop this conflict in order to turn again back to this similar situation. So they found out one of the biggest leverage, which is Hormuz Prolate, and this is putting much pressure to use politics. We should also analyze this issues through American domestic politics. we know that soon there will be election in United States, which is a big blow for Republican Party. Now they are controlling Congress and both houses, but this war is very unpopular here. Prices are rising, and the price for gas also rising, which is also bringing some pressure from domestic audience.
Okay, thank you. So the escalation of the threat, I mean, the escalation of the war is become a kind of tit for tat, both sides. And this is in international relation, we use the game theory, and one of them is the chicken game. I mean, who will first, their two sides is going to almost crashing, and the one expected to change the way. But look like both sides is accelerating the condition. We don't know. So how about Rahim Farzam? Is the expert from the Center for Iranian Studies. From your perspective, what you seeing from the Iranian or the other perspective, the Trump's message?
Thank you. I'm very happy to be part of this panel. I think this shows the war has turned to deadline for both sides. I think the main issue here is the gap between what's happening on the ground and what other sides, each side perceives it. I believe that both sides are far from understanding each other's position. From US perspective, if we look at the war expected to be short, and with quick results, but it has been going on for more than a month and without any result. Maybe operationally, we can see, from a military point of view, US is very successful, and it could manage to inflict a tremendous amount of damage on Iran, but we can't say the same thing on the political and strategic dimension of this war, because regime is still there. This regime change was one of the main objectives of Trump administration. This was declared by Trump himself, but we say still regime is fighting, and the Hormuz Strait, Strait of Hormuz, which was open before the war, is now closed. And the more importantly, the war is going to an uncertain direction, which I believe Trump administration doesn't want. And if we look at Trump administration strategy from the beginning, they are trying to get result through pressure. And this was the case when the negotiations were going on, And you may remember that Witkoff was, once Witkoff said that, he was asked by President Trump that why Iranians are not backing down despite this level of pressure. I think the same approach is still going on by the United States, and but this time with military means. And they believe that if they increase pressure on Iran, and Iran at some point will step back. But this is not happening. I think that the main reason is that there is a misperception by the Americans on Iran's views towards this war. For Iran, this war is a war of survival. And Iranians believe that, Iranian decision makers, this is a part of a long strategy which has been going on against their country for several years, at least from 2018, when Trump administration withdraw US from the nuclear agreement. And they believe that this strategy includes sanctions, target killings, periodic strike, military strike. So they believe that when they step back, the pressure will be more, and this will make them more vulnerable in the future. And this is why they are not stepping back. So I think that Iran in any condition is not going to step back. And when we look at from US perspective again, if there wasn't Hormuz, I think Trump would have declared victory, would have already declared victory, and would have said that I destroyed Iran's nuclear capacity and weakened its missile program. So it takes years to rebuild it. But right now he cannot do that because as long as this Hormuz Strait is closed and pressure on US economy and Trump administration will continue. So if there is no a quick agreement, which is being discussed through third countries, once more, I think Trump administration will escalate and hit harder Iran. But eventually, I believe both sides will come to the negotiating table, maybe after 1 or 2 weeks, because there is no much time for Trump administration regarding the upcoming US elections. So at the end of the day, I think this will the war will end through negotiations.
First, you mentioned about the misperception of the United States government about the war will end very quickly. That's to remind me the First World War. I mean, they were expecting within the 1 year the war end, but what happened? 4 years and destroyed the whole system, international system. And some scholars saying that this war also a similar kind of effect we can see. The American led the international system demising, I mean the declining and so on. The second point is that you mentioned about there's differences between operational environment versus the psychological environment. Operational environment, what we see is the American and the Israel aggressive attacking and destroying the civil target and the huge, but psychological environment. Actually, this attack, the aggressive attack of United States and Israel, make the Iranian people support their government, rallying under their flag. So that is the make them stronger, and that's the point. How about Eldaniz? Eldaniz Gusseinov is the non-resident research fellow at the Haydar Aliyev Center for Eurasian Studies, and at the same time he's head of the research Nightingale International. So he's collecting intelligence information, so he can find some intelligence information, share with us the Russian sources and other Western sources. Well, how you see the condition and the Donald Trump's message?
I don't think that this will be this is the last stage of the war, and I think we will see other wars which will take place between US and Iran. So even if they will reach a ceasefire right now, does it mean that US or Israel cannot restart the strikes against Iran? It doesn't. So if you just take a look at the data on the protests which will take place in Iran after each strike, you see that there were always an uptick. So protests were always rising after strikes were finishing. It means that the war is coming more into the phase of permanent war. It means that they can stop striking on Iran right now. For example, they reach a ceasefire, but in 2 or 3 months, new protests can start again in Iran because economic problems is so hard to resolve without lifting international sanctions against Iran. Just imagine Iranian mobile auto car companies, they buy pistachios from Iranians to sell it in China to purchase some yuans and to use these yuans to buy parts of cars, vehicles, to repair cars in Iran. This is how international sanctions work. So you always have troubles to assess any currency which is neutral, which you can use to purchase goods from other countries. This is the same about Russia and Iran, for example. It's so difficult to switch to, let's say, national currencies trade without using dollar. So I think that once they will reach a ceasefire, if they reach a ceasefire, it means that new strikes can start again once situation in Iran will be worsening. And I think it's a huge, challenge for the current regime. So how they manage this protest and how they will manage to circumvent external parties to intervene. I think the only issue is just to use the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz helps Iran to get some new revenue from the conflict, maybe also to stabilize the internal situation. And this is, I think, from my perspective, is that dead end. It means that they come to a dead end. Either you deblock Strait of Hormuz, or you will lose your, let's say, one of your tools to put some pressure on US and its allies. And I think in that sense, the conflict might really escalate, because without reopening deblocking the Strait of Hormuz, it means that US will really lose its other measures to put pressure on Iran.
Thank you, Eldaniz. So I want to ask several questions related to your expertise. First, I want to start with the Serhan Hoca. Serhan Hoca, I know you are working on the long-time modern Iranian history, state-society relation, Iran and the Middle East. So my question is related more this from a historical perspective. How does the current Iran, United States, Israel confrontation comparing the previous Iran confrontation with the other countries like the Iraq, like the others, in terms of its impact on the Iranian state society relation? Are we witnessing a national mobilization of national sentiment? One of the very famous Iranian director, even though the Iranian government going after him, he would turn back his own country. He said that I need the support. But we see some of the Iranian people, Iranian diaspora people in United States and in Europe, some of them is supporting the American action against their people. So how we can explain this condition? And the second part of this question is the more related United States. Is there in United States, on the other hand, we see that there is a division among the political elite. And you think that this division among the political elite have impact on war-making capacity of the United States?
Thank you very much, Yaşar Hocam. Actually, you asked, I think, three major questions. The first one is a comparison of this war with previous wars in Iran history. The second one about this narrative on consolidation, mobilization of this Iranian society behind Islamic Republic. And the third one is the potential or alleged friction within the Trump administration regarding this war. Let me start with this consolidation and mobilization discussions, which I think is very difficult, very important. You refer to Jafar Panahi, the renowned and esteemed Iranian director who said he was going back to his country despite all of the cases started against himself, despite the problems he's having with the Islamic Republic. I think there is no consolidation to start with. There is no consolidation in the Iranian society as a whole. There is definitely some in the Iranian society who definitely defend their country under war conditions, and they definitely support the war effort of the Islamic Republic. And some of these people do not necessarily like the Islamic Republic. Some of these people do not necessarily like the major policies of the Islamic Republic. That far we definitely know there are those people. But there are also those people who want the Islamic Republic gone in any way possible, through popular protests or some other way. And for example, President Trump was referring to these people, and he said some people are just calling us back, and they say, come back, keep on bombing Iran, etc., etc. That is definitely not the Iranian society as a whole. I do understand that there are some people both within Iran and also outside of Iran. I have met several of these people when I was studying in Europe. I know some people in this diaspora, the Iranian diaspora. Not all of them, but a good part of them. They definitely support any kind of military action, foreign military action against the Islamic Republic, if it will lead to the fall of that regime. But there are also some people who are rather balanced in their approach to the Islamic Republic, and they say we don't like the Islamic Republic, but that is not how it should be gone. They rather support popular protests, which they think can potentially topple the Islamic Republic. But there is no consolidation as a whole in the Iranian society, because we have discussed this issue of consolidation last year in June as well. Some people said that there is consolidation, there is mobilization, people are rallying against the Islamic Republic. We knew at that time that definitely some part of the society supported the Islamic Republic. There is no question about that, okay? But a wholesome consolidation, no, I don't see that at the moment. People just fear their lives and the lives of their beloved ones. Well, I mean, quite naturally. I mean, we all see what's going on in the country. The Americans and the Israelis indiscriminately bombing Iranian cities, bridges, schools. We all remember, for example, what happened in Minab on the Gulf on the 28th of February. I mean, almost 200 school children, both girls and boys, were massacred by the Americans and the Israelis. So people fear for their lives and for the lives of their loved ones, okay? And so it's about survival. I think it's not about mobilization and consolidation. This is my reading of what is going on. And I definitely understand the reactions of people, because they know that the Americans and the Israelis do not only attack the Islamic Republic as a regime, but they attack Iran as a country. Okay, and they give a reaction to that. But when this war is over, when Iran is back to its normal life, we will see that people will then start voicing their complaints once again, just like they did, for example, in January. So I think there is no, let me repeat again, there is no consolidation as a whole, but there is survival. And this is what is happening at the moment. I think this current war is not or cannot be compared to the previous wars. Definitely not to the Iran-Iraq war, because in Iran, between Iran and Iraq, there was a kind of balance of power between these two states. Okay, Iraq was definitely not more powerful than Iran in 1980 or between 1980 and 1988. So there was a balance of power, both in terms of military capacity and manpower. Even if one of the parties was superior, it was definitely not Iraq, but it was Iran who was the superior side. I think this war cannot be compared to any war in the history of the Islamic Republic, or in the history of Iran for that matter, by the way, not only Islamic Republic. I go back, for example, maybe you can compare it to the wars with Iran fought against Russians under the Qajars, which eventually led, for example, to the Treaty of Turkmenchay in 1828. It was a devastating defeat, and it was a devastating peace agreement between the Russians and the Iranians, because it led to territorial losses and war indemnities, etc., etc. So that is what we can compare this war with, because there too the Russians had the upper hand definitely against Iran, because Iran didn't have a comparable army at that time to be able to fight against Russians. And now too, Iran is definitely a lot weaker than the US, both militarily, economically, and otherwise. and a combined U.S.-Israeli forces. I mean, that has been the worst nightmare for the Islamic Republic. They have been saying that since the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003. They said we should not be fighting against the combined U.S. and Israeli forces because they knew that that would be devastating. And they made everything possible. We should give them the credit for that. They made everything possible to avoid such a war. Okay. In 2015, for example, they sat down in 2013, and in 2015 they signed this agreement, JCPOA, with the Americans and other parties. Okay, because they knew that otherwise the risks were too high. And last year again, President Trump, who did everything against the Islamic Republic in his first presidential term, he, for example, killed Qasem Soleimani, Muhsin Fakhrizadeh, etc., etc., and he invited the Iranians back to the negotiation table, and Iranians said yes, okay, and they sat at the negotiation table with the Americans on the 12th of April. And these negotiations also continued for 5 rounds until eventually the Israelis attacked Iran on the 13th of April. And even after that war, I mean, people have been talking, are still talking about Ayatollah Khamenei, right? The late Ayatollah Khamenei as a radical figure. And now President Trump says that there are no radical figures anymore in charge of affairs in Iran. But that radical figure, so-called radical figure, even after the war, said yes to the negotiations. He said, okay, we are coming to negotiation table back. And they started negotiating with the Americans again on the 6th of February, right? I mean, first in Muscat and then Muscat, Geneva, back and forth, okay? Why? Because they knew that the risks were too high if they had to fight against the Americans and Israelis. But eventually, the war broke out, and Iran allegedly is doing well in the war, which I have several doubts about, but I think that's another discussion. We will come to that maybe later on.
Yeah.
I do respect the reactions of the Islamic Republic, and I do find this war illegal, unprovoked, and lawful. That's another discussion. But in terms of, I think there's an exaggeration about Iran's performance in the war. Some people say Iran is doing great. I don't really think so. Iran is just doing fine, so to speak, okay. But if there is further escalation, which we have been talking about, especially in the first round, we talked about the potential further escalation. I think that is going to be a nightmare-like episode of this war for the Islamic Republic, which I do not really like personally, and I do wish that doesn't really happen. As for the disagreements between in the Trump's administration, I think it's quite understandable that they do have disagreements over the war with Iran. And we knew, for example, that Vice President Vance didn't want this war to happen. Okay. And I think personally, Witkoff had also had a lot of doubts about the necessity of such a war or going into war with Iran. Okay. And eventually, it was President Trump and also Prime Minister Netanyahu who deemed and saw the war necessary. So I think there is a disagreement, and I think there is a growing pressure on President Trump, okay, because he was after an early victory, an easy victory, and that definitely didn't really happen. And now he wants, I mean, we have been talking about his exit strategy, off-ramp, etc., etc. So I think he wants a way out to ease this pressure on himself and also on his administration. So apparently there is disagreement within his administration, and some people find this war increasingly unnecessary and increasingly against the national interests of the United States of America.
Thank you, Serhan Hocam. Alouddin, this question is more related to Central Asia because of your research and your expertise. What lesson can Central Asian state draw from their experience with the Middle East war zone to prepare potential new security challenges arising from this U.S.-Israel-Iran war. So what kind of preparation can Central Asian state can do?
Yeah, thank you for your question. So, in case of this Iran conflict, I think Central Asian countries can draw several lessons from the war in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Syria, and Gaza. Their lessons, their experience can be applied to Central Asia. The first lesson I would say is more about border security. We know this, for example, war in Afghanistan led this widespread presence of ISK and drug trafficking into Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, which was also a security issue for Central Asian countries. And I think this war can also bring similar issues to Central Asian countries. So that's why most of the countries most probably sharpen their border control and expand their intelligence sharing on extremist factors in this context. The second lesson I would say more about like community resilience. Because of the conflict in Gaza, we can see like some kind of there were lots of sympathetic polls, for example, even protests in some Central Asian countries. So I think Central Asian countries try to use this event to depict it not as a holy or religious war, but it's the conflict. Most probably they try to use some authoritative clerics and schools to frame it as a war and to stay out of this war. Again, not to link it to the religion. Most probably some underdeveloped part of Central Asia. At the same time, for example, some people who were returned and repatriated to Central Asia will be under watch to make sure that they do not do anything against social safety and security. But at the same time, I think that the Central Asian countries should try to take prepared. For example, we know because of this sudden start of the war, some citizens of Central Asian countries died, and most probably they will try to increase to the capacity of evacuating Central Asian citizens. For example, Uzbekistan evacuated its citizens from Turkmen borders and Azerbaijan, and most probably this kind of things will be taken into account. And militarily, I think the counterterrorism issue will be still on the hood because they are also paying attention on this. If we talk about international relations and foreign policy, I think most of Central Asian countries they try to keep current position. Officials they're all neutral and they try to be hedging diplomatically, not choosing any side without blaming any countries as an aggressor, but at the same time keeping communication with all parts. And of course, one of the biggest lessons would be in economy. So Central Asian countries, like most of them, especially small countries, they depended on this import from Iran. For example, some foods, we can already see that some in Kyrgyzstan, in not Kyrgyzstan, in Turkmenistan and Tajikistan, the price of certain foods coming from Iran are rising, and they try to stockpile this. At the same time, they try to develop some agricultural sector, fertilizer, and most probably develop some import substitution programs and to increase the safety, social safety nets and things similar to that one. Yeah, this is my...
Yeah, thank you so much, Alouddin. Eldaniz, I know you are. Sorry, Rahim. Then the Eldaniz I want to ask. Rahim, you are drawing your expertise on the Iranian domestic politics. How has the ongoing war effect on the internal political dynamic in Tehran? Is the government or ruling elite is consolidating their power, and especially specific group IRGC or those hardliner? Even though Trump is claiming that according to Trump, he said that we cleaned the old hardliner. Then right now is the less hardliner, so we can sit and talk, and they may sign the agreement. You share the same view, or there is a different things happening inside Iran?
Thank you for the question. I think it's an important question, and it goes to the core of what's happening in Iran today. And when we look at the current situation, the war has changed internal dynamics, political dynamics of Iran in favor of hardliners. Before the war, there was a strong supreme leader, and there were different institutions, and the power was distributed among these institutions, and also there was some at least some level of balance among political and security institutions. But the war has changed this in the fundamental way. Today, asking who is in charge of in Iran, I think it doesn't mean anything. What we see is a deep shift in decision making in the new structure, central. I mean the security apparatus becoming the central, and IRGC is playing the main role. They are in charge of everything in the current situation. It's involved from internal security, intelligence to the strategic decision-making process. So Mujtaba Khamenei, he's a supreme leader. Formally, he's at the top. But in practice, his role seems much more limited. He's rarely visible, and he's not talking to the people directly. And there are some speculations that he's injured. If he's okay, if there is no any problem in his health, I think he appears to be operating within a small security environment. What we are seeing this in Iran is there is not a single strong leader, but a small circle which is from security elites, and most of them are from IRGC. So when it comes to the presidency, Masoud Pezeshkian, he's the representative of reformists, and he's in charge of government. And it seems that his rule is also limited, and he's mostly his role is mostly administrative in the current situation. And we saw this. There was a good example that we experienced about 2 weeks ago. He said that Iran is not going to attack Gulf states anymore, but shortly he had to take back his statements after the harsh reactions from the security environment. So the political environment changing in favor of hardliners, and pragmatists and reformists are becoming less visible. But I think this is quite normal, because Iran is in a war situation. So in this kind of situations, systems tend to consolidate around the security actors. But I think this is not the whole picture, because when we say at the moment people are supporting the regime, but this does not mean that the support will continue in medium or long term, because we know Iran has been struggling serious economic and social challenges. So there's no doubt that this challenge has deepened after this war. So Iranian administration knew that when the war ends and the external pressure disappeared, there will be potential of unrest. So this is why they are seeking for something stable. I mean, now what Iran wants is a stable outcome from this war. They want to. Iran is not against negotiations. Iran can stop this war at the moment, but what they are looking for is a guarantee that will reduce the possibility of next year's attacks, because this will be very difficult for them, that when they are dealing with the economic problems of the country under the external threat. So for this reason, they want to end this war in a lasting way. Regarding the fractures within the system, there has been an ongoing discussion in Iran regarding the administration, and many people argued that the system, the regime, needs to be reformed. And this was also becoming more visible. Even after 12-day war, this started to gain some momentum. For example, former President Hassan Rouhani, who is one of the most prominent figures among reformists, he has called for broader reforms more than one times. And also former Foreign Minister Jawad Zarif wrote about the need to change in foreign policy in several Western media outlets. But when the war started, these debates disappeared from public space. I think this is also quite normal, because they believe that they are fighting for the survival of regime, and in this condition, in such a condition, internal debates tend to pass. So, but I don't think they are gone. When the war stops or when the war ends, I think they will come back, or they will appear back, and maybe more stronger, especially considering the fact that the current leadership, Supreme Leader Mujtaba Khamenei, hasn't consolidated his power yet. So the war did not end these debates, but maybe it has delayed. And after the war, once the war ended, I expect some kind of tensions or debates regarding the country's future.
Thank you, Rahim. The first round, the last questions to Eldaniz. Eldaniz, as we know, you are a geopolitical analyst focused on trade corridor. So how this, the war of United States and Israel against Iran have impact on the viability of this road, especially international north-south transportation corridor and other roads like IMEC, the Indian, Middle East, the European road, and this if it will have a negative impact, then you think that this middle corridor become more important, and how Central Asian countries can connect with the Gulf countries. Recently, your recent publication you have in our center, your report on the Gulf Central Asian cooperation before the war. And after the war, what do you expect that cooperation can be survive or change?
Thank you so much, Professor, for your question, and thank you so much for recalling the report which we published on the website in cooperation with the Ibn Haldun University and Haydar Aliyev Center for Eurasian Studies at Ibn Haldun University. So actually, as we speak about the corridors, they are always under threat. I mean, since 2022, we always see that we are launching some corridors. Let's say we were speaking about Trans-Afghan corridor, which is right now, we can forget about it because of the ongoing skirmishes on the Pakistan border. We had some wishes by using the Trans-Iranian corridor. I remember as I in UAE, I went to one bazaar. I was in one market far away from Fujairah, and I could find some fruits from Uzbekistan there. And I was really wondering, how could Uzbek fruits get to a market in UAE, in Arabic Emirates? And of course, by using, I think, a corridor through the territory of Iran, because the corridor through Pakistan is not completely operational. And as we see all these trends happening, we see that Central Asia is trapped by two major conflicts which are taking place right now. I think, no, not only two, three. If you also include Ukraine, Russia, we have Iran and Israel, and they have also Afghanistan, Pakistan. So the only option right now that only two options to be connected with Gulf states, actually, which are remaining, we can use, let's see, so you need to get to Langan through the whole China from Central Asia. Or you can also use China-Pakistan economic corridor. So, for example, a cargo driver can go from Almaty to Kashgar, to Horgoz, via Horgoz to Kashgar, and from Kashgar get to the ports of Pakistan. But CPEC, there are so many liabilities and difficulties to be completional, because there are some overfloodings, there are some earthquakes, so many difficulties. I think it's operation with Pakistan, with Gulf states, but also with, for example, India or Eastern Africa. So as for now, regarding North-South, it's operational, by the way, but only your endpoint is Iran, because it's so difficult to go from Iran right now and to reach Gulf states, because there are some strikes which are taking place between Iran and Gulf states. So it's almost impossible. So you can use existing railway infrastructure and also port infrastructure. For example, there is a ship from Akhtal which is transporting goods, for example, flour or seeds and also grain from Kazakhstan to Iran by using Anzali port or other ports in northern Iran. And also Russia is doing the same. Russia, for example, we were seeing some increase of using the port of Ola. It's not far away from Astrakhan, which also connects, let's say, Russian Caspian part with the Iranian Caspian part. But the problem is that we were always highlighting Caspian Sea as a sea of friendship, and now we have Caspian Sea also being under strikes. So you see the northern part of the Caspian Sea, Ukrainians using their drones to strike Russian warships, and you see the same time Israel striking against Iranian ports in Caspian Sea, because there are some ships which are transporting military vehicles or military, let's say, some parts, drones from Russia to Iran to be able to fight against US and Israel. So in fact, we see so many conflicts. We see, again, Russia, Ukraine, we see Afghanistan, Pakistan, we see Iran, Israel, and in that sense, the middle corridor is one of the most reliable corridors. We see this diplomatic renormalization between between Azerbaijan and Armenia. We see the launch of the trip, but the problem is that Iran will be unpredictable. So once the conflict, I have power cut off at home. So once the conflict will okay, here I am. So once the conflict will finish, we don't know how relations between Iran and America will look like. And that means that if the relations will be worsening, Iran might really launch new attacks against critical infrastructure which US is using. For example, Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan supplying, I don't know, like up to 50 or even maybe more of Israel oil imports. So as you know, there's a Haifa port, and it was also, I mean, there were some damages because of Hezbollah attacks. This port is being used to import Kazakh and Azerbaijani oil. So, and you see at the same time, Nakhichevan strikes, for example, Iranian negative stance against towards the DRIP. It means that also if Iran will have a perception that the corridor is being used by US to import some critical, let's say, materials. So as you know, like tungsten and antimony, these are two minerals which are being used for American military industry. So America has a lack of stockpiles to initiate new attacks against Iran. But tungsten and antimony, which US eagers or is importing, by the way, from Central Asia, is a part of the stockpiles which are being used to strike against Iran. So in this case, Iran might also attack the Middle Corridor. Iran might attack BTC or any other infrastructure projects which are going from Central Asia to Europe. And in that sense, we should really think of how we can increase exchange of information, let's say within OTS, also in cooperation with Türkiye, to prevent any crises or threats for this critical infrastructure. And also we might think of how OTS can cooperate with Iran, let's say, as Iran might be isolated in this scenario. Like, let's say they will reach a ceasefire, but relations will be worsening between US and Iran. So how might OTS like maybe be a bridge between Iran and the Western countries? And I think it might really play this role in this regard.
Thank you, Eldaniz. I see some audience writing question. We will have the last round, then after that we will take their question. As audience, if you want to ask question yourself, you can open your microphone, and first you show your hand. You can open after I permit you, you can open the microphone. You introduce yourself, your affiliation, then you can ask the short question. And if you express whom you want to ask question, is better. Okay. The last part of this our talk, I want to make a shorter kind of scenario. First, Serhan Hocam, looking ahead next year, next 1 or 2 years, which scenario would be most damaging for Turkish interests? A prolonged low intensity war or conflict, United States, Israel, especially Israel and Iran, most probably the American president under the pressure to withdraw, or full scale of the regional war, Gulf countries also involved, or sudden de-escalation and it leaves the United States-Iran tension unresolved, without resolving, but the war is stopping. Just ceasefire, not a peace agreement. And how should regional actors or Turkey prepare for each this scenario? Which one is the worst and good scenario for Turkey?
Thank you very much, Yaşar Hocam. From what I have been following since the beginning of the war, I see that Turkey was very much prepared for this war. Not that they saw the war coming 100%, because top Turkish diplomats, like for example Mr. Hakan Fidan, also talked about the possibility of a diplomatic solution, but still they knew that there was very high potential for a war, and they were apparently preparing for that. And the position I think Turkey has taken from the beginning is very successful. But I think there is a nuance about Turkey's position regarding this war. If you remember, Yaşar Hocam, last year in June, during this 12-day war, Ankara's support for Iran was almost unconditional and was more powerful. not only Ankara regarded the war, 12-day war, as unlawful, illegitimate, and unprovoked, and also Ankara spoke about Iran's right to self-defense and criticized Israel for almost all of its actions against the Islamic Republic of Iran. But this time, President Erdogan called this war and described this war as meaningless, unlawful, but did not necessarily, to my best knowledge, talk about Iran's right to self-defense, especially did not appreciate Iran's attacks against its neighbors, neighboring countries. And so this is, I think, the first part of Turkey's position regarding this war. Could you please just give me 10 seconds? Just 10 seconds, please. I think there's a issue. Sorry.
Okay. I mean, we can wait the Serhan Hoca.
I am back.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I am back. So I think this is the core of Turkey's position about this war. Okay. But the best scenario for Turkey, I think, is for this war to stop as soon as possible. I mean, it can be a temporary ceasefire. It can be an end to all the hostilities, whatever. So Turkey wants this war to stop, and without spreading into further into the region. Because I think a regional war, a prolonged regional war, is, I think, the worst case scenario for Turkey. Because if such a thing happens, if there is a regional war in which, let's imagine, for example, some of the Arab countries in the Gulf, like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, or whatever, fight against the Islamic Republic of Iran, I think that is the worst scenario for Turkey, because in that scenario, Turkey will be unable to keep the balance between Iran and its Arab neighbors, because there is still a balance in Turkey's position regarding the war. I think this is the worst case scenario, and I think Turkey wants a diplomatic solution to whatever is going on between Iran and the United States of America. President Erdogan said that several times, even in the United Nations meetings. In his last speech addressed to the United Nations, I remember, for example, that he touched on this issue and he said we support or we want a diplomatic solution to this nuclear crisis because Turkey doesn't want a nuclear Iran. Okay, I mean, not that Iran is running after nuclear weapons, but if there is such a risk, Turkey doesn't want a nuclear Iran. Okay, Ankara made it quite clear several times in the past. And Turkey definitely doesn't want Iran to penetrate into the region through these proxy groups, okay, what Iran calls the axis of resistance. Turkey doesn't really appreciate that because that is also playing a destabilizing role in the Middle East. But at the same time, the main difficulty for Turkey is that Turkey is very much concerned about the activities of Israel. If Israel emerges victorious from this war, whatever victory is, we should, I think, first define victory. But if Israel emerges as victorious from this war, I think that is going to add to the already existing problems in our region from Turkey's perspective, because Israel at the moment, over the last few years at least, is the main destabilizing force in the Middle East. Okay, so I mean, Turkey doesn't want Israel to win this war either. Okay, so the sooner the war stops, the better it is for Turkey. I think this is how I can define Turkey very, very briefly.
Okay, I mean, this is the remind me 2015 when the Iran signed the nuclear agreement with the P5+1, and some already saying that if the Iran develop very close relation with the European and the United States, have the trade, then Turkey's role in Middle East will decline, and Iran become again the center of the American Middle East politics, which was, according to those experts, before the revolution happened in Iran. A lot in this question is this time is related more Uzbekistan. How has Uzbekistan positioned itself diplomatically toward the current war, and do you see any divergence between Uzbekistan approach and that of the Kazakhstan? That's after you. I will ask the similar questions to Eldaniz and ask the Kazakhstan position too. What's the Uzbekistan position?
Thank you, Professor Yaşar. So, in theory, all Central Asian countries are neutral, but when we see there is nuances. For example, when we analyze, for example, Uzbekistan's position was more active to a certain extent, balanced. For example, Tashkent issued a statement calling all sides to perform maximum restraint, but without escalating this conflict. But at the same time, for example, we can see Tashkent blamed, for example, attack to Qatar as a breach of international law. It's unacceptable. But Tashkent at the same time doesn't try, or like at least doesn't want to indicate any side as aggressor, but at the same time like trying to keep this balance between these countries without choosing a side, which is also part of Uzbek foreign policy. But if we see sympathy, I think Uzbekistan is more sympathetic to Palestinian or Arab cause, I would say. For example, Uzbekistan joined this peace accord and tried to build the schools and hospitals and other programs and this kind of policies. But at the same time, Uzbekistan backed two-state solution. But we can also see that Uzbekistan doesn't blame other like powers, or whether it's Iran or Israel or United States. It's kind of more neutral position. Comparing to other Central Asian countries, I think that this only Tajikistan's position was different. Tajikistan from the beginning of this conflict started showing support to Iranian cause, and they blamed, for example, this attack. But in case of Uzbekistan, Uzbekistan also expressed condolence. Uzbek president visited, for example, Iranian embassy in Tashkent. But at the same time, Uzbekistan, for example, called, for example, attack to infrastructure in some Gulf countries and called to perform again a restraint on this regard. But in case of Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan's case, Eldaniz will tell more in details. In case of Kyrgyzstan's case was a more generic statement expressing serious concern and calling for constructive dialogue. But at the same time, I think Kyrgyzstan was less active in performing this diplomacy toward issues in Middle East.
Thank you, Alouddin. Continue the Central Asian countries standing. I want to ask this question to Eldaniz. The Kazakhstan has a different position. Look like. First is the Kazakhstan. I think the last country signed the Abraham Accord, and wants to have the very close relation both the United States and Israel. So from Kazakhstan perspective, as a middle power, they claim that, at least Kazakhstan claimed that, pursuing multivectoral foreign policy. How should Astana, the Kazakh government, ruling elite, balance its relation with the United States, with the Israel and the Iran? And of course, we can add the Russia and China too, because if the war is already war happening, have a important impact on the Kazakhstan because of its own energy resources and having the strong relations some of the countries under the attack. So is Kazakhstan's strategic autonomy still achievable, or Kazakhstan need to align with the United States and or other countries?
I believe Kazakhstan is to a lesser degree neutral as other Central Asian states regarding this conflict. So as you remember, it was the last country which, expressed its condolences regarding the death of the Khamenei. I don't know if Kyrgyzstan expressed any condolences. I'm not sure, but among at least the countries which expressed anything, Kazakhstan was the last one. And it was not at the level of the president; it was at the level of head of our Senate. So like it's an upper chamber of our parliament. And also there was some other expressions from the side of the president regarding the ideological position. Regarding ideology in Iran by criticizing some of its positions, stances. So I would not really say that Kazakhstan views this conflict as like, let's say, completely neutral. There are some threats, of course, for Kazakhstan coming from unpredictability which might arise from Iran. It's as you remember, during the 12 days war, there was a drone which reached Mangostal. So it's a sign that Iran actually might also reach any American funded, or let's say any projects which are interesting or vital, even like for American investors in Kazakhstan, just to make some damages for US, and overall just just to make it a picture that Iran might really attack some other objects of America or of American interest outside, let's say, Middle East, like in Kazakhstan. So that's an issue, and also at the same time we keep selling our grain to Iran by using, as I told you, ports of the Caspian Sea, but also railways crossing Turkmenistan to Iran. And also there's a problem that overall in Central Asia, we have a fragmentation of positions. So Central Asian states didn't issue any joint, let's say, declaration. In comparison to OTS, by the way, OTS has done it. There was a meeting of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and they also condemned attacks on Nakhchivan. I'm not sure that Tajikistan condemned attack on Nakhchivan. I think there were no condemns from the Tajik side. And same about like Uzbekistan, for example, sent humanitarian support. The same did Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan. But we see that all five states, they have different perceptions of this war, and also different threats. And that's quite interesting that it also reshapes, I think, our population overall in the region. So we see that some pro-Turkic narrative might rise against the backdrop of these events. At the same time, in Tajikistan, I think there might be some, at least among population, a new narrative about like some joint heritage with Iran, like supporting Iranian population, supporting the people of Iran. And this is quite remarkable that there was a declaration at the level of OTS. There was no declaration at the level of Central Asian states. That means that in this Turkic formation, they have a position, but Tajikistan is not included. And of course, I think this might really have impacts for the future of Central Asia, and also for the future how Tajikistan might really perceive the OTS. I mean, as maybe some sort of, let's say, challenge for Tajik identity in Central Asia, especially against the backdrop of the war in Iran.
Thank you, Eldaniz. Last questions to Rahim. Rahim, what domestic political calculation inside Iran most influence its policy toward Central Asia and Turkey during this war? I mean, are there any faction in Tehran advocating for deeper engagement with with these countries, Turkey and Central Asia, or they still is feeling suspicious about the collaboration or cooperation among the Turkic state, which is Eldaniz mentioned. OTS had the declaration against this war and put the position altogether these countries.
Regarding the Central Asian states, I didn't see anything, especially in the wartime. I don't think this is the priority for the Iranian state. As we know, Iran is attacking Gulf states, and before the war, Iranians tried very much to repair their relations with those countries. But now we say you're attacking those countries, and this shows how Iran views this war, especially with this war, because Iran believes that he can repair its relations with these countries when the war ends. But regarding the Central Asian states, I don't think that Iran, especially in a situation like this, is considering some kind of engagement. But in Turkey, I think there is discussion regarding Iran's relations on Turkey. I believe that there are some parts in decision making that they want to attack on some military sites which belong to US in Turkey. So the failed attacks was a sign of that. But at the same time, Iran eventually will need some mediator if it want to end this war with negotiations. So Turkey is one of the countries that can mediate between US and Iran. So regarding Turkey, Iran has always been suspicious, but this time when we look at the diplomatic sources, they are always messaging very positively about the Turkey's attitude in this war. But in decision making, I believe that there are some ones they want to, as I said before, attack as they are doing in the Gulf states, because they believe that one of the effective way to decrease the possibility of next US attack is to decrease or to weaken its military assets in the region. So as I see, they believe that US bases in Turkey is also playing very important role in US attacks on Iran.
Thank you, Rahim. So we completed the panel process, but not finished yet. I see the conversation section. There are some comments, some questions. Let me read them. And if any panelist wants to answer those questions, open them. And after finish that process, then we will ask the audience if they want to express their opinion short and ask question. We will open their microphone. First, let me read the conversation part. Shorzad Bek Masedikov, he wrote, "Hi all, impact for Central Asia war, I mean, in case of worst scenario, a refugee flow to the region and the nuclear pollution." I mean, the refugee flow we don't see, and the refugee flow could happen only the Turkmenistan, because Turkmenistan has border with Iran. Zakir Usmanov, he wrote, "Hello everyone. How realistic is it for Arab countries to enter into armed conflict, and what consequences might this lead to?" So this is a question maybe Serhan Hoca and Rahim wants to answer, or others also. Ümit wrote, he say, "Hi all, main impact on Central Asia, one is the economic, higher oil and gas prices benefit exporters, means that Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan mainly, increase inflation, trade, instability disrupts transport routes, raising costs and delays. security risk of extremism and regional instability may increase. This is a general expectation, but that doesn't mean that it can happen. Sharzad Bek, again, he wrote, then Central Asia don't get oil from Iran and from Russia. I mean, those countries who are producing the oil, Kazakhstan and certain level Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan has, but right now it's only enough for. Ümit Ergaşev will also say, respond, I think. Yes, true, Central Asia mainly import energy from Russia, not Iran, but Middle East conflicts still affect global prices. Plus, if Russia imposes export restriction or embargoes, it can directly impact energy supply and the price in Central Asia. Işık Gün Akfrat asking we are taking the question, and her question is the question the old speakers. Have you read Javad Zarif piece for Foreign Affairs? I think already Serhan Hocam is say hi. How much weight you ascribe to that article? What is your opinion about his proposal for ending the war from the Iran's perspective? Okay. Ibrahim's question is is it's feasible for the Iran condition to be met? I mean, the Iran has a certain condition to stop this war, or not responding the American and Israeli attack, especially the economic sanction that has been imposed on the country for over 40 years, especially now that US saw that even with lingering sanction, Iran is actually doing more than expected and still standing stronger. Secondly, are some European countries supporting Iran to protect their countries from attacks or avoiding Americans' dominance in the energy market? You need to mention which countries you mean. As the United States seem playing the game with their economy through energy dependency. Javid Zafer, my question, Israel also threatening Turkey as well. In any Iran-like situation, what would be policy of Turkic state? Would they respond correctly, or support Turkey, or what would be their position? So this question, especially to Eldaniz and Alouddin, but Serhan Hoca, if they want. Could I respond? Perizat Amirova, could I respond about Uzbekistan? I will give you. I will permit you, Perizade, after everyone finish. Some question regarding Israel threat to.
Hocam, there are too many questions.
Yeah, I'm finishing. Turkic Republic of Northern Cyprus. Okay. Let's start from the Serhan Hocam. Short answer. You don't need to answer all of them, but just give the short answer. Then the Rahim, then the Alouddin, and the Eldaniz can try to answer the question. Then I will permit you to also respond. Okay.
Sorry, Yaşar Hocam, because I have already forgot some of the questions.
Okay, then go ahead.
But yeah,
whatever you remember.
Okay. But about Javad Zarif, yes, I mean, Javad Zarif is not in charge anymore. He is retired, and he was until very recently a deputy president, but he no longer is. And everybody here, I think, knows that he acted as Iran's foreign minister for 8 years. During these turbulent years, he was leading the team negotiating this nuclear deal signed in 2015. So he is somebody important. Okay, he is some of the few people in Iran who knows the U.S. Best. Because he also served as Iran's representative in the United Nations, and he was educated in the U.S., etc., etc. So he knows a lot about U.S. and about a lot about American politics. And in brief, he says it's possible to end this war. Okay, so this is the core message. of his piece in Foreign Affairs. And also he says that we can even cooperate with the Americans. Okay, and Javad Zarif is very clear that Iran's interests are not in China, are not in Russia. They definitely are important, but he just a few months ago he criticized Russia for working against the interests of the Islamic Republic, and he also criticized Russia, and he said they never wanted JCPOA to happen. They never wanted this nuclear deal to happen, and he was criticized for this in Iran, but he said, I mean, this is the truth. The Russians wants us and wants the Islamic Republic to have problems with the West all the time, okay? Because that gives them some kind of a challenge, some kind of a leverage with the Americans. So I think is it realistic at the moment? No, it's not realistic. I know that. And many people inside Iran criticize Javad Zarif very harshly, and they said very bad words about him, which I think he is very familiar with. I mean, this is how people have been criticizing him for ages. It's not nothing new. But the problem is everybody has been talking about Trump's exit strategy from this war. What is Trump's off-ramp from this war? But the question is, what is Iran's exit strategy? As I said, I do not think Iran is in a very powerful position, although I do believe that they are doing fine and they are resisting against the US and Israeli military pressure. But at the same time, they also need a ramp off from this war. They also need an exit strategy. And what Javad Zarif proposed was just one version of this potential strategy. Definitely, Iranians are not going to go that way because now the Revolutionary Guards are in charge of affairs inside Iran. And even if they do find a negotiated solution, that is not be the solution Javad Zarif proposed, definitely. But I think Javad Zarif has a point. This is what I would like to say. Thank you.
Okay, Rahim, what's your response to question, comment?
Maybe I can comment on regarding the question that about Gulf states approach. Maybe from Iranian perspective, I can comment.
Of course.
Yeah, this is one of the questions that I wondered why Iran is attacking these countries. First of all, I think I have to underline the point that Iran is trying to keep the regime survive. I mean, Iran's priorities regime is survival. So everything else is becomes secondary. You know. So and the second case, I think Iranians in the longer calculation, long-term calculation, they believe that they can repair their relations when the war ends, and even they believe that when the war ends, these countries will question their relations with the United States rather than they question their relations with Iran. So they believe that at the end of the day, geography matters, and they will come to the conclusion that, and they will restore their relations with Iran. And third, maybe the most important one is Iran doesn't have any other effective tool to deter US and Israel, especially US. Because regarding Iran's exit strategy, what Iran wants, if I want to comment, Iran is not seeking for a decisive military win. It's not. It's obvious that it's impossible against US. And what Iran is looking for is Iran wants to make sure that its adversaries, I mean US and Israel, cannot achieve a decisive military win, which means the collapse of regime. So in order to achieve this goal, Iran is following two-part strategy. One is, and militarily, it's attacking US assets in the region, and also Iranians are pressuring US administration through economic means. And in this case, attacking Gulf states is very important for Iran, and they believe that it proved to be effective. So this is the logic that you are attacking Gulf states, and they don't have any other effective tool actually, to deter US aggression. This is the logic of Iran's attacks against Gulf states, I believe.
Okay, Alouddin and Eldaniz, the questions related to Central Asia. First, let's start from the Alouddin. What's your response and your comment?
Thank you so much. Regarding economies of Central Asia and the shock waves, I should have mentioned this before, but now I will talk about, for example, some shock waves to Central Asian economies. First of all, this is related trade and transit disruption. I don't know. Maybe you know that in Central Asia, like some policy analysts started talking about the Central Asia being as a connector north to south and east to west, but with the Iranian route closed or dangerous, now Central Asian countries have to reroute their directions, most probably through middle corridor, but at the same time there is also challenges there. There are capacities limited, and there are lots of issues regarding digitalization and shipment and this waiting time. But the second option is Russian territory, like northern corridor, but this is also a very sensitive issue. Like most of Central Asian countries do not want to be sanctioned or damage their relationship with European countries or West. This is also a very sensitive issue. But now we can see that cargoes and shipments are blocked in Iranian borders, which is also creating a key problem, especially for Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan, for example, exports it is I think like more than 60% of Uzbek export to Turkey and Europe are going to Iranian territory. This is big blow to Uzbek economy. We can also see like similar situation with air cargo and passenger flights because of this war. Now these flights are disrupted. Second issue is commodity issue and energy, and we know since February the price of oil spiked to almost like 50%. Now I think today it was reached $110 per barrel, which is also problematic for some Central Asian countries. Yeah, in short term, Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan stand to gain from extra export revenues, but this is global instability will have negative impact in the long run. But at the same time, some countries like Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan faces, for example, this costly gasoline and diesel imports. Probably you saw news that since the first day of the war, Russia suddenly increased the prices of this gasoline, which is also a big problem for some Central Asian countries. Yeah, I think it was mentioned Uzbekistan has this modest domestic fuel, but still economy is growing, population is growing, so we are also to a certain extent dependent on petrol imports and electricity from gas. This will all affect, of course, this higher oil prices raise fertilizers and food prices, which will result in local inflation, which is not good for economy. And of course, Central Asian governments are trying to control inflation, but at the cost of economic growth. And you probably saw news that in recent years, Central Asian countries were center of attention because of this wonderful economic growth. But this will be affected also by this war. Like, of course, it depends on how long it will last. And also the agricultural issues. And I think Kazakhstan and Tajikistan also trying to secure alternative ways, for example, regarding the sugar prices and grain. And we should also talk about investment and remittance. Over past 3 years, the Gulf countries, especially Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar, emerged as a new active partner of Central Asian countries, pledging billions of dollars of investment in the renewable sector, in gas pipelines, agribusiness, and infrastructure, which was very optimistically perceived in Central Asia. They were saying like it will probably replicate or even surpass Chinese this investment BRI engagement. But now, because of this conflict, this optimism is to a large extent shaken. Even though this conflict ends, I don't think the investment will be flowing to Central Asia because of this conflict, and they probably need to restructure or rebuild their own infrastructures because of this damages. But there is also a positive side. But at the same time, Central Asian countries use this war to brand itself. For example, this is zone of economic stability and might invite some European American companies to come to visit Central Asia. For example, AI sector or some other companies. I don't know to so large extent to what extent it's feasible, but this is, I think, one of the policies Central Asian countries are conducting. And there is also issue with remittance. Lots of Central Asian people work in Central Asia, and the remittance, for example, plays enormous role in GDP of certain countries. For example, in Tajikistan, it equals to 48%. I think in Uzbekistan 15%, in Kyrgyzstan also 15%. But because of this war, Central Asian people from Central Asian people were coming back to Central Asia, which will also affect their buying capacity, and this will also affect in this demand. Also, this is not also very good for economic growth. This is also one of the challenges. Challenges.
Yeah, I mean there is of course the trap because of the war in Ukraine. The northern corridor is closed because of the European are not accepting anything coming through Russia, and the southern corridor because of the Iran and Gulf War is closed. This is a Gulf War basically because of the not only between United States, Israel against Iran, but also Gulf countries also somehow is part of this war. The other thing is the Afghanistan-Pakistan conflict is creating another closing the Central Asian countries to reaching the open sea because of the Central Asia, the landlocked country. Only two way, either in east through China reaching, or through middle corridor, which you already emphasized. The capacity of the middle corridor is not that high. That's is a problematic area. Okay, Eldaniz, how about you? I mean, what's your comment on those who mention about the Central Asia, Kazakhstan, and so on?
There are so many myths about Kazakhstan benefiting from this war, especially regarding the growth of oil prices. So first and foremost, you should think how Kazakhstan will ship this oil to its main customers. So CPC, as a consortium which goes for the territory of Russia, is under attack. There was an attack yesterday, by the way, on this pipeline. And at the same time, Novorossiysk, yes, the Novorossiysk port. At the same time, you have attacks on infrastructure, which also helps Kazakhstan to ship its oil to Israel. So the only customer which might really buy oil from Kazakhstan without any disruptions, I mean, from geopolitical side, is China. And it means that Kazakhstan might really benefit from the growth from the spikes of oil prices, but mostly thanks to China. It means you have one-sided dependency on one single customer, and once China will find any other solution, will find any other partner, Kazakhstan's oil exports will just decrease because there are so many disruptions on the other fronts. So in that sense, I think all these discussions regarding Kazakhstan benefiting from this war, it's just, as I told you, I mean, it's just ignoring real facts which taking place right now. And also regarding our economic growth, it's also different. Like in Central Asia overall, for example, prices for fuel, I mean, they are one of the most, I think, lowest in the world. And still, I don't see any growth of our fuel prices in the region. So I don't see it as a problem so far. I think that overall situation over Iran has mostly ripple effects. And the major effect is that its implications for Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a state which has a joint border with two states which conduct wars. I mean, Pakistan and Iran. And in that sense, of course, the worsening of humanitarian situation in Afghanistan has a huge implication for Central Asia, and it helped us to find a new format of C5+1. So 3 days ago, there was a meeting in Kabul. There were mostly head of diplomatic missions of Central Asian states in Kabul, but also there were some deputy foreign ministers from Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan joining this meeting. Why? Because Afghanistan sees these disruptions which take place both in Iran and Pakistan, and it really wants to minimize these risks which arise from it by cooperating, by increasing its cooperation with Central Asia. So I think we see this growing interconnectivity between Central Asia and Afghanistan, or at least dependence from Afghanistan on Central Asia, and it might really help us to resolve some of our problems which arise from the territory of Afghanistan, especially regarding water issues and also drug traffic and terrorist threats which arise from the territory of Afghanistan. And from another standpoint, it's also about security issues, what I have already spoken about. So which state might really help Kazakhstan from any unpredictable measures from Iran? So far, it's only Russia. And I think Russia might really use this opportunity to increase its leverage over Central Asian states. By providing some kind of guarantees that Iran might not attack BTC, for example, Baku Tbilisi Ceyhan, or Iran will not attack some oil deposits on the territory of Kazakhstan, which are being extracted or processed by American companies, for example, in the Caspian part of Kazakhstan. And also China, which is perceiving Central Asia as a stability within instability. I think China will also increase its leverage over this region, because you see Pakistan fighting, you see Myanmar is a civil war, you see the government withdrawal in Mongolia, state of Malacca is always this dilemma, and also Iran being destabilized. So you see just, like you have one single exit from this instability, and that's Central Asia. So yeah, I think there are some options to consider within the OTS, and we should really think of increasing our cooperation in logistics, improving this, our documents which we signed. We should really implement it, bring all this formats like ETIR, ECM, to make it easier to go through the OTS states, to make this middle corridor more functional. And also think of how we can minimize risks which might arise from Iran in the case of any unpredictability, which I have already spoken about. So how can we minimize these risks? When we have a good actor, we have Azerbaijan, which has good relations with Israel, with Iran, and I think we should use this opportunity of Azerbaijan being a mediator in this war which takes place right now.
Okay, thank you. Actually, Azerbaijan President Ilham Aliyev say that need to concentrate on the organization of the Turkic state, make even the kind of collective turn that as a collective security organization, so it can defend the right and the sovereignty of the member state. Okay, before we are closing everything, Farizadeh Amirova wants to express her opinion about the Uzbekistan. Farizadeh, floor is yours. Let me see how can I open your microphone, or someone is help me. Can you open your microphone? Is it okay? Or?
Of course, it's okay.
Okay,
so hello for everyone, colleagues. So first of all, we need to talk about as a Amirul. There is today as a young researcher. So Today we need to talk about the fire spreading before it that reaches out there, for example, and we're witnessing the calculated escalation in the Middle East, actually. So the recent missile interception. So, for example, maybe we can take the example of NATO member. It's not isolated and like an incident, and actually it's trying to trigger other these countries and for example, dragging the military alliance into the direct war with Iran. The factors of the immediate question we have to ask is whose stand is against most of the world jumps to the conclusion that Iran attacked Turkey. So, I mean, the answer is only Israel. Why? As we have seen, for
Could you
example,
please repeat it again? I didn't understand the last part of your sentence.
Yes, so we should give to ourselves the one of the question who stand to gain the most of the role, jump to conclusion that Iran attacked you, and this respond will like this. As we have the from public statement or the world to the not only that's Israel leadership but also the greatest Israel. The vision like this one, vision explicitly only includes the right answer. And drawing the borders through the Syria, not only Israel but Iraq or the Saudi Arabia and the other Turkey countries. And one of the stated goal is to encircle not only that's NATO but also that's perceived threat. The method is that's not only the solution but also the provocation. Yeah, and our focus today is not only our Tehran but also the Central Asia to our countries. How does a war between NATO just in Iran will be impact just the Persian Gulf. If Iran becomes the war zone, that's I would give the abbreviation of this word instinct. Yeah, that's one of the international and other the north-south transport corridor. Yeah, is separate. That means not only that your good minerals, but also green energy are trapped. The tour Russia or China that's more slower than more expensive. That's potentially that's very controlled their movement. And Iran that's blue shade on our the Central Asian trade. And
Ferizade, could you
yeah.
conclude because there are already is late time here, and also there is questions we will take. If you make shorter, I will appreciate. Thank you.
Okay, I got it. I will give the one of the experience from Swan is a just a lesson from Syria and Iraq. Is a every time the Middle East, one of the exploded for example, foreign fighters and travels out to Turkey to. And Iran to join the conflict. Central Asia, specifically to the famous to Fergana Wallis, has been historical. That's recruitment ground. If Iran is bombed, we will see that's reverse flow and radicalize it. So radicalize it, turning to Dushanbe, for example, or Almaty. That's bringing the tactics like ideology and other the weapons. You are counter the tourism terms. Tourism is a budgets will double overnight. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ferizade.
Thank you so
Your
much for
opinion.
your attention.
Thank you. I think the one I see the hand Orhan Yolchiyev. Orhan is heading the think tank in Baku in Azerbaijan. I think Orhan, your think tank's name is changed. Steam to Caspia. So, okay.
Assalamu alaikum, Orhan Bey.
You want to make a comment or
I have a
question?
little bit of comment and two questions. If you don't mind.
Please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Yaşar Hoca, for such an interesting event. I'm very happy to see my friends here. We are very familiar with many of the speakers. And I have two questions, actually. And we see now the transformation of of the global security architecture is becoming practically inevitable. And the collective security mechanisms and the institutions of external guarantees are being tested for effectiveness now. So it seems like that Central Asian countries will have to increasingly rely on regional cooperation formats in these circumstances. And as you know, Azerbaijan and Turkey has become one of the countries affected by the war in Iran. In the first week of the conflict, both states were attacked by Iranian drones and missiles. So how do you assess the role of strengthened military component for Turkic states amid rising regional tensions, and which mechanisms within the organization of Turkic states can be taken? This question is to our friends from Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, to my friends Eldaniz and Alouddin. And the second question is about the middle corridor. Eldaniz touched a little bit about this. So the complex military situation in the Middle East is already affecting shipping routes and cargo distribution, creating new challenges for Central Asian countries and Turkey. And it's obvious that the importance of middle corridor is rising. But at the same time, it opens huge opportunities and risks as well, because the more the importance of the middle corridor grows, the more opponents of this corridor may arise who will try to destroy its effectiveness. So this is a challenge for all of us. And as we see changing transport routes and increasing instability are increasing costs for companies, forcing Turkish businesses to adopt strategies to minimize losses, which mostly depend on the routes passes through Iran. So I would like to ask to our Turkish colleagues, maybe Serhan Hoca could answer.
Okay, thank you.
Question: which scenarios of further conflict escalation could significantly alter the strategic importance of the middle corridor for Turkey and the region? Thank you.
Thank you. Let's answer shortly this question. Alouddin, should we start with you? I mean, then I think Eldaniz have connection problem. Then we can ask to Serhan Hoca.
Thank you so much for your question, Mohammed. Yeah, indeed, this situation is very difficult for Central Asian countries. For I am one of those people who believe in the idea that the collapse of international system and rise of regionalism, Central Asian countries should work together to present itself as a one economic and political voice. Yeah, unfortunately, like Uzbekistan's case, yeah, Uzbekistan appreciates this Turkic organization, but still for Uzbekistan, priority remains Central Asia. So now regarding this defense or like the building kind of a collective defense, I think like this year, if you read the president of Uzbekistan's article, which was published a couple of months ago, you can see now Uzbekistan has started talking about this, about collective defense and composing the list of threats which might destabilize Central Asian regions. But other than that, I don't know to what extent in Turkic organization Uzbekistan is promoting this collective defense, but I know that Uzbekistan is working very closely with Turkey regarding this intelligence sharing and learning the experiences the same way with Azerbaijan. But although it's going too slow, but I think with this war and these other factors will escalate this process, and Central Asian countries will pay attention more on this collective or I don't know regional security system. But still, like if you see rhetoric in Central Asia, like they see world a bit different. Although this globalization is not very popular, the old language of globalization, multilateralism is still there. They are talking and not taking part of side and being active, being open and working with all Central Asian countries, but at the same all like not Central Asian countries, but all these different actors, but at the same time there's different geopolitical challenges and trends are forcing them to work more closely on that.
Thank you. Eldaniz, also you want a short answer or
Yeah, thank you
short
so
comment?
much. Çok sağ olun Orhan Müellim. Çok meraklı sual. Thank you so much. And I would just say that we should really think, if we speak about military component of cooperation within the OTS, let's speak about something like concrete. I think against the backdrop of the war in Iran, we should think of how we can combat against drones. And this is where Azerbaijan and Turkey have an outstanding experience. I mean, first and foremost, how to use a drone and how to fight against a drone. This might be like one of the dimensions to cooperate within the OTS, like let's say. So I think we should really to find a joint ground where we can really cooperate, because so far for Central Asian states, as Alouddin said, and I agree, we should prioritize Central Asia as a region because we are all neighbors. And Azerbaijan, by the way, became a part of Central Asia. It's also a part of Central Asia, and it's a part of our Könül coğrafyası. So I think in that sense, we might have a multi-layer cooperation. So we might, for example, since Azerbaijan has a huge also Soviet heritage, we can understand each other better in military. So we still also speak same language in military sphere. And also we might think of how we can spread from this joint ground to Turkey also, and how we can join this experience of in military sector, given current challenges. Like the challenge of drones, I think this is the most important one. So Nakhchivan was attacked by drone. Mangistau, a drone reached Mangistau region. So I think that if any threat might come, it will be drone. So how can we fight against it? I think this is one of the dimensions where we can cooperate. And more than that, of course, as I have already spoken about it, let's speak more about some practical dimensions of cooperation within the OTS. And I think logistics is number one right now because of the middle corridor. So let's think what are the bottlenecks and how OTS can really help to solve these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. The last part is the Serhan Hocam. With you, we can complete our panel because already over the 2 hours and the highest place we had the 100 people. Right now is the half. So I think the people are tired too. But it's a very important point, and with you we can conclude our panel today.
Thank you very much for my fellow panelists, Yaşar Hocam, to you also for the questions. As for this middle corridor, I think I tried to refer to this several times during my remarks in the 3 rounds of our discussions. I think when the war is over, whenever it is over, maybe tonight, maybe in 2-3 weeks' time, as I said, I'm expecting positive conclusion from these talks, but the other scenario is also possible. Whatever happens, whenever this war is over, Iran will have a devastated, the Islamic Republic will have a devastated country with a lot of economic and geopolitical problems caused by this war and also Iran's war strategy, both in the Gulf and also otherwise. Also with Turkey, for example, Iran is going to have some issues, not necessarily military confrontation, definitely, but as our friend also referred, 4 missiles arrived from Iran to Turkish airspace, and although they were intercepted, they arrived to Turkey nevertheless. And also Nakhchivan airport was also attacked by an Iranian drone. These should have never happened. We all know that. As for this middle corridor, as we all know, Iran is having issues with these corridors, the wars on corridors, because this middle corridor also bypasses Iran as this development road which comes all the way from Iraq to Turkey and from Turkey to Europe. And this is one of the frustrations and the resentments of Iran, which also has understandable reasons. But I think when this war is over, Iran will have geopolitically weaker position, both in terms of Central Asia and also in terms of the Middle East politics. Thank you very much, Yaşar Hocam.
Okay. Rahim came back. Rahim, do you want to add anything? Let's take the last word from you, because you weren't here, so we thought that we are completing.
No, thank you. Thank you. I don't have anything to add.
Thank you I would like to thank the first panelists because of the very great panelists, very insightful, very fruitful discussion we had, and I would like to thank them to accepting our invitation and answering question without any point. And I would like to also thank the audience. Today we reached over 100 people. Right now is 52 people, but we had the 100 people. So we will continue this series. Next, we are planning to have this war impact on the economy and energy policies, politics, and the future of the region. So we will continue as a Haydar Aliyev Center for Eurasian Studies Zoom meeting. I also would like to thank our partners, first especially Center for Iranian Studies and the colleagues coming from the different part of the Central Asia, Turkic world, and all around the world. Before I close the session, I will remind again, we have a Turkic summer forum. The participant who wants to participate, they can apply and fill the form until May 15. And we will have the debate, we will have the simulation game, we will have the panels, and we will have the round table in different issues, different topic, and all we hope that war end, and those people who are suffering this war, not only the war in Gulf, but in Gaza, which is the Israel doing a genocide action still is continue. That one, all war is end, and we will have the more peaceful world. Thank you so much again for being part of it. Okay, bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Orhan Bey, for çok meraklı sual. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Aksamau, it was great to see you. Gabit also was with us. I hope he will join as a keynote speaker next time of our conference. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.